Welcome to Energy Thinks, a podcast about the oil and gas industry's role in the energy future. I'm Tisha Schuller, your host and the CEO of Adamantine Energy. Good day to you, my listeners. It is season 9, and I am just so happy to have my 4th book out in the world. It's called The Myth and the Moment: From Polarization to Progress in the New Energy Landscape. And the themes of it are just everywhere and guiding my actual day-to-day consulting work at Adamantine and informing some of my thinking about what comes next, what's out there that needs to be discussed. So that's what we'll look at today. So in today's solo pod, I'm going to I'll start as I do with a personal update, and then I will reflect with you on when I recently put some writing out there and I was wrong. And then third, I want to talk about the problem solvers, like these climate-centric stakeholders out there who are tasked with the interface between something like a net zero goal or 100% renewable goal and the energy reality on the ground right now. Who are they? What do they need? How can we help them? I'm just going to have some thoughts about that. I'm not sure where they'll go. So I look forward to seeing what I have to say. I hope you also are enjoying these solo pods. I've been getting so much awesome feedback from you, and I weirdly really enjoy them and think about, you know, when you're away from home, you think about what you're going to tell the people at home, like how you're going to summarize the day for them. I've started doing that with you all, like, oh, what's happening this week? And what am I going to tell the listeners in the solo pod this week? It's really fun. And so that's why I have a tad bit of a laundry list of things to go over with you, because it helps me get my thoughts together, but also it keeps us, you and I, in conversation. I love it when you send me feedback and make my ideas better and tell me I'm wrong, which apparently you all feel extremely comfortable doing, for which I am grateful. I hope you will go to energythinks.com if you want to learn more about our work at Adamantine. While you're there, you can please subscribe to my weekly newsletter. Both of these things are true, which is also on Substack. I have added a paid Substack newsletter version because many of you have asked how you can support my work if you are not a client of Adamantine. And so that's kind of cool because it just creates another venue that allows me to do more of this kind of work: writing, thinking, podcasting. So thanks so much. Thanks for asking. Thanks for supporting. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy today's solo episode of Energy Thinks. Well, good day to all of you again. It is a gorgeous fall day here in Colorado. And as I often like to do before recording a solo pod this morning, I went down to town to swim and I saw a moose, which is so cool because it's a beautiful fall day. It's so warm, and to see a moose just hanging out on the way. If I can figure out a way to make a title that makes sense, where I can put the moose as the picture for the Both True that goes with this episode, I'll do that so you can see my moose. But if I can't sort out how to do that, then feel free to ping me in Substack or LinkedIn, and I can put a picture of the moose in the comments. It's so cool to have a moose. We also have a bear right now. So there's like the bear, and right now there's the moose. So I'm super psyched. I am, in the swimming part of the personal fitness journey, because in less than a month, I'm going to Egypt for a swim trek. That's a lot of days of doing a lot of swimming, and there's no earthly way to get in shape for that under the best of circumstances. But I happen to be traveling every single week between now and then, so I just get in the pool whenever I can. But today I passed a really big milestone, which is swimming for 90 minutes. Not straight, it's a master swim, but still, I just want you to know 90 minutes is a long time to swim, but I need to be able to swim at least 2 hours before I get to Egypt. But I think that's the hardest, I guess, metaphorical hill to get over, the 90 minutes. It's kind of like 8 miles in running. Like once you're over it, you're over it. So I probably will never have a training workout longer than 90 minutes before my trip. There's just not enough hours in the day, but pretty excited about that. The other personal update is I've been reflecting on something really interesting. Sending my second kid off to college has left me like confusingly content with my life. And I've been thinking about this, that here I am, I have met all of my life goals and exceeded them, like many things I did not even imagine or possible when I was, say, 25 years old. So it's kind of cool. You kind of have two choices if you've met all your life goals. You can set new ones. I have decided that I'm just going to let the rest of my life be gravy. So it's like every day is a blessing and a bonus. Everything I accomplish, or if I have some, I don't know, wild success around something, I'm just going to consider it all icing on the cake. That's my current take. I've like been cruising through ambitious goals my whole life, and funding the kids' college accounts was like top of the list for over 20 years. And now they're like in college and we're supposed to spend that money down. And it's crazy. It's just crazy to be on this side of all that. So that's pretty cool. And I'm enjoying that. So that's my little personal update for you. All right. The second thing I wanted to reflect upon, and I don't exactly know where this is going, is where I was wrong. So a couple weeks ago, I tried to get it published and was unsuccessful. And so I published it on my Substack, Good Riddance Climate Week. And I'll link the piece in the show notes so you can read it if you want. But the general idea was, I don't think in this political environment, it's particularly useful to have a bunch of people go to New York and talk about climate. And yet I got some feedback from people I really, really trust and admire who were at Climate Week who said I was wrong. And it was an inspiring, fulfilling, cross-sector, well-pollinated series of conversations. And it was just much more grounded in reality this year. So there was a lot of talk of natural gas, a lot of talk of reliability and affordability, and that these were all really, really good signs. And so my reflection on being wrong is that I have never been to Climate Week. And the whole thing just makes me feel allergic in the same way that like going to some kind of like yoga retreat makes me feel allergic, even though I love yoga. It's like just the whole like groupie culty thing. I just don't like those sorts of gatherings. But people that I know and respect and trust and who are very pragmatic, and some of them work in oil and gas, they love it. They love going there. They feel inspired and connected and hopeful, and they make good relationships. And a lot of Adamantine alumni were there because one of my very sweet clients kept sending pictures with them. So obviously it's a great event for some people. So I just want to say I probably shouldn't have written a piece called Good Riddance Climate Week as someone who doesn't go and never plans to go. Like it's not exactly hypocritical, but it's like hypocritical adjacent. Now, here's the thing I still think I got right, which is if you're not in that in group, if that's not your clan or tribe, even sort of, just in the work you do, your work is around emissions reductions or methane or tech, I still think the whole thing has a cringy vibe from the outside, especially right now. And I can't reconcile my twinge of regret that I feel when people tell me I got it wrong. I kind of go, like, you're right. But, well, both of these things are true. I also think I'm right. That if you want to get more people in the US of A interested in addressing climate, you probably shouldn't hold a big fat party called Climate Week. It's just a humongous turnoff. Yeah, I still think that. So I am both wrong and right. Both of these things are true for me. I shall strive. Well, I don't know. Usually when I'm wrong, I try to be better, but I'm not sure there's a better here. I think there's just a like awareness component. Like if you're going to critique things you don't go to, then the people who go get to tell you you're wrong and they are right. How's that? Okay. Yeah, that was a little bit circular. I'm not sure. Do you need a hand out of the whirlpool I just created? Let me just offer you a hand and pull you back up and we'll go into part 3. Okay. So here's part 3. I want to think about the problem solvers. And I want to think about what they need. And I want you to think about this. And I want you to send me some really smart ideas because I think if we don't solve this, the myth comes roaring back. Okay, so let me explain myself first. Let's just do a quick recap in case you're a brand fresh spanking new listener or you just don't, study and remember everything I have to say. Let's do a quick refresher of the myth. The myth of an easy energy transition is coming to an end because there are so many forces making it clear that the energy transition is not inevitable, it is not easy, and it certainly cannot happen at arbitrarily determined timeframes. And yet, there is still a huge number of people who find the myth of an easy energy transition super compelling and super powerful. And that's why I refer to it as a myth, because it has a mythical, can you call a myth mythical or is that redundant? Well, you get where I'm going with this. It has these powerful characteristics that transcend logic. It's not exactly religious, but it's in that place where you believe and you imagine that if you believe fervently enough, it will come true. And so there's a lot of people in that camp. And those people, I'm going to call them climate-centric stakeholders who are adherents to the myth. I'm going to go on a quick tangent. Stay with me. Right now, adherents of the myth have a wonderful villain to blame for stalled progress on climate action, and that is the Trump administration. So if you are or know someone that climate is a very top priority and the myth of an easy energy transition is incredibly compelling, in which case you don't call it a myth, you just call it the inevitable energy transition. If that's the case, then the Trump administration, and particularly this war on clean energy projects, on renewables, and then just in the last week on blue state projects, I'm just not going to give that 2 thumbs up. It is just distressing nonsense. But nevertheless, okay, so if you're those climate-centric stakeholder, you now have somebody to blame. And that somebody is not physics. That somebody is not, oh, the myth was never possible or feasible. And I think we had a real opportunity that is actually made harder by some of these things, some of these culture war things. But we had a real opportunity to say the myth of an easy energy transition was just that, a myth. Physics, energy demand, consumer cost, all these things have weighed in. And now we all need to come up with a new, more pragmatic, realistic plan. But there's going to be a lot of people that say, well, we're just in timeout. We are just in timeout until the Democrats are back in charge, or climate action is once again a shared public priority. Now, of course, I don't think that's right. But we should understand that that's the resurgence of the myth. If that is the case, let's just say in 4, 6, 8, 10 years, oil and gas companies, energy companies, politicians and leaders are going to be blamed, right? Are going to be blamed for the delay, and we're going to be right back where we started with the myth of an easy energy transition. I think that is actually the default baseline scenario for what's going to happen on planet Earth. Fortunately, you and I, and a lot of people we admire are also on planet Earth, and we're going to do something different. And that is to engage with and as the problem solvers. Okay, so tangent complete. I am now returning to the problem solvers. So who are the problem solvers? These are the people who they might be middle managers at companies. They might be elected officials. They might be appointees in government. They might be regulators, either appointees or staff. But these are the people who are caught between some kind of net zero ambition or commitment and the reality on the ground right now. And that reality is rising energy demand, rising energy prices and an electorate that does not have any patience for rising costs or any dysfunction of the power system, or really any disruption of the energy system. So cost and reliability are central. So they are squeezed between this. But let's just say in like my home state of Colorado, they are squeezed between legislation that says the state's going to do X by 2050 and on the ground reality of rising power needs, skyrocketing costs, and the need to address both of these things, right? So those are the problem solvers. And one last thing is the really weird thing about the problem solvers is in some ways, like they report to no one and everyone, right? Because who owns the problem of grid reliability? In some isolated situations, it might be the utility, but if the utility has been under regulatory mandates to do a whole bunch of stuff, there's going to be a lot of finger pointing, right? For rolling brownouts, for price spikes, for inability to build new generation to meet rising power demand, for all the data centers going to a different state, for all the generation resources going to a different state. Like there's going to be a lot of finger pointing because no one really owns the problem and no one really owns the solution. So I think of the problem solvers as our best hope, and they are squeezed in the middle. In a really wonderful aspirational world, our elected officials become problem solvers, right? They look at what's happening and they say, I too need to understand and address the opportunities and problems of the energy system. And I will do so with eyes wide open. Okay, so that's the whole setup. Now, what I've been thinking about, so I have been asked by several different people that I love and admire to write a new version of the myth in the moment for the problem solvers. And as I think about this, I think this is really quite a different audience and quite a different challenge to me as a writer and a thinker. And that's why I want to get your minds on the case as well, because you interface with the problem solvers, or if I'm really lucky, you are a problem solver and you're thinking about this and you're going to give me some stellar advice. So a few examples of the problem solvers are anyone running a public utilities commission, either as a commissioner or a staff. Any gubernatorial, let's say, appointee who's charged with climate or energy, since all energy policy became climate policy. But even if you're in a red state, you may still be squeezed, or even in a red jurisdiction, between some of these climate-centric stakeholders and ambitions and the reality on the ground. So we're really thinking about real people out there. And within the private sector, I'm imagining companies that made very public net zero commitments that have an activist workforce, let's say, or a historically activist workforce who feel that climate or ESG action is a core part of their identity. And if you're like a manager or leader in one of those organizations, you're thinking a lot about how to navigate this squeeze between the ambitions and what's happening on the ground. Okay, so here's how I'm thinking about this. I think there's three things the problem solvers need. The first one is they need, as human beings, as individuals, to make peace with the myth. So that's one thing. We'll talk about that more in a sec. Second, I think they need a deeper understanding and kind of a narrative about what is happening in the energy system. One of the things the myth did was it just took as fact that the energy system would decarbonize if there was enough political will. And so the idea of like, well, what's actually going on? They need more information about what's going on. And then the third thing they need is options. Like these are three things you could do going forward. And these are the partners you could do those things with. I think it's those three things. So let's explore those a little more. And then if you think there's something else that I missed, because I'm sort of imagining that I could translate this not into a book, but maybe into some white papers. And so I will be interested in your thoughts on that. And I would like to get feedback and input from those who are engaging directly with the problem solvers in this way. And from you, the problem, if you're a problem solver and you're listening to this, one, I'm honored. And two, I'd like to know, I'd like to know what you need help with that we could perhaps provide. Okay, so let's talk about the first one. I have learned from my own experience and engaging at this awkward interface between being like a hippie lefty and the oil and gas industry. If you're like a hippie lefty, that's shorthand that I think we all know what I mean. And it's not derogatory coming from me because that's how I self-describe. And you need to make peace with something that has been vilified by other hippie lefties. That is a very personal journey. And you have to duke it out within yourself. You are not going to duke it out with opponents, people you don't trust. This is why there are some hard limits on what education can accomplish, particularly education that's designed to change hippie lefties' minds. The reason it doesn't work is because you have to go into the depths of your soul, hit rock bottom, and come back out with a new perspective and identity. But here's the thing, when you do that, you are forever converted, right? There is no one more passionate, authentic, and powerful than the authentically converted to a new point of view. So I'm going to give this some more thought, but I think there is a whole step one, which is what is the way that a climate-centric problem solver charged with delivering something like 100% renewables agenda, what is the way they work their way through that? And I think whatever those passions are, you have to run them to their ends. So when I worked at the Colorado Oil and Gas Association, and I've told this story a lot, so I won't belabor it here, and COGA went from representing natural gas to representing oil, I actually had to spend a whole weekend asking myself if I could represent oil. And so what I did was I just said, can the world live without oil? And I had to work my way through all of that. So I think there is actually an idea of taking on the myth by running its course out. So for example, like here in Colorado, we had a 100% renewables agenda, but now everyone with any lick of common sense understands deeply after, I don't know what we were on, year 7 of 100% renewables agenda, that yeah, you're not gonna have 100% renewables. That makes no sense. But a lot of people probably had to go sit in a closet and cry for a few minutes before they came back out and said, oh yeah, net zero makes, the technical term is a shit ton more sense. So I think that's the first one. I do think we really need to think about how to facilitate, support, and create places. And if it's a whole team, like if there's an entire, let's say, division of a regulator that is suddenly figuring out they cannot meet their mandated goals, they're going to need to spend a couple days in a room figuring that this is like facilitated retreat material, right? Because what we've been doing is pretending it's going to be okay. So that's not going to work. But how we, we're not going to do it by education. So how do we help facilitate that for people who are on that journey? Understanding that those then become your most valuable problem solvers because they are committed to solving the problem and they will have the courage to speak truth. And they will be, for some amount of time, a very compelling narrator that there is no such thing as easy energy transition. Not forever, because it turns out, we all know, those of you who are listening to this podcast know, you only get to be a translator for so long and then you're considered a sellout. So there's a sliding scale of effective spokesmanship for the myth of an easy energy transition. Okay, so the second thing, I think the problem solvers, and this may go hand in hand with that first point, I'm not sure, but what they need is help narrating what is happening in the energy system. First of all, as someone said to me this week, spiking the football on the things they accomplished. In the US or in their state, we have reduced carbon emissions by this much. We've raised a lot of interest around these things. We have a bunch of technological advancements. Oil and gas companies are just deeply committed to keeping their emissions house in order. There's lots of great things that we should celebrate, but we do need to understand like how far have we come, but also like how far have we not come? And this is a really important part of the truth telling piece, which is just understanding what is the actual situation on the ground. And we got to look at stuff like coal. Like, do we need coal? In some places, we may need coal. And like, let's just take a real look at that. And does that mean, and in some places that we're saying we need coal, we may not need coal. So like, if you're going to be a truth teller, like you don't get to just do it one way or the other. You need to do it comprehensively. And we need to do this with emissions as a key part of that discussion, because there is a tendency in our industry right now to sort of think there's a pass on emissions. But there's not, particularly with this constituency, the problem solvers. Like emissions are front and center. There are a whole bunch of people that think there should be infinite cost to energy with carbon emissions. And so we need to be able to coherently talk about cost and emissions profiles. Okay, so I do think we're gonna have to think about how we help problem solvers take stock of the energy system. And I don't know if that's a generic set of playbooks. I don't know if that's help creating state by state roadmaps. I'm not sure, but we need to think about that. How do you help narrate what is happening and what needs to happen next? Okay. The third thing I think problem solvers are going to need then. So if you imagine your problem solvers are on a journey, like, okay, I understand the myth was just that, a myth. Energy transition is hard. I still have a bunch of stakeholders that care about emissions reductions, and they're also clamoring for more, cheaper, reliable energy. What do? I need to understand my energy system. Okay, now what? I need options. I need options that take into account carbon intensity, cost, reliability, and a nod to all the other trade-offs, right? Because in any jurisdiction, some energy sources are more palatable than others based on the trade-offs. If you're in a historic coal community, they would rather have coal in many cases than nuclear. And why? We just need to understand that these all have trade-offs and that the value choices are going to be heavily informed by that community and what they value. And they're not all going to value the same things, even within one community, but having an honest conversation about these trade-offs is going to be really important. So in addition to options, and this is where I think energy companies come in, is they're going to need partners and they're going to need cover, right? They're going to need enough of a sense of people looking at this, thinking about this, working this. They are not the pointy tip of the spear, right? They're not the bleeding edge of this endeavor. Is that the same metaphor or two different metaphors? I don't know. Bleeding edge, pointy tip of the spear. I'm not sure. Someone let me know. So right now I'm thinking about maybe 3 parts or 3 papers focused on this group. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. And I think with that, I'd like to just about wrap it up. So last solo episode, I ended with some thoughts about our, like individually, our agency. So I just want to end with that again, because I've been thinking about it a lot. Sometimes right now there's government shutdown, all those clean energy projects got stopped, of which there's so much overlap with like oil and gas industry and energy industry hubs and partners and cool clean tech. It's just, hopefully that will be a temporary situation. But sometimes it just feels like shit's just going downhill. Well, here's the thing. If you happen to feel that way, and if you don't happen to feel that way, what comes tomorrow is unknown and TBD. And so our individual agency at this moment, by choosing to participate in our own way at whatever scale we can, I think there's a few things that we can do. One, bring your brain and your intellect to the problems that need smart minds on them. That's why I'm asking you to think about the problem solvers. Bring your heart to your every engagement. We need to humanize each other. We need to humanize people we perceive as our opponents. And we need to humanize the problem solvers who are going to help get our whole society out of the messes we've created. And I think we need to show up in both of those ways. So thanks for joining me today on Energy Thinks. Whew. That was my episode for today. That was a lot of thinking. My brain is tired. Or it might be the breakfast burrito I ate after I swam. It's hard to say. But thank you, listeners, for your engagement. And thanks in advance for the ideas you're going to send me. I hope you will take a moment and rate and review Energy Thinks wherever you get your podcast. It helps people find us. It would also be amazing if you gave my book, The Myth and the Moment, a 5-star review on Amazon. I'd love to move up the rankings there with that. Please go to energythinks.com to check out our work at Adamantine. And while you're there, please sign up for my newsletter. Both of these things are true. I'd like to thank my colleague, Kayla Chives, for making the Energy Thinks podcast possible. Until next time, I'm Tisha Schuller. I'm wishing you and yours happiness, prosperity, and good health.